so that they can go on with their, you know, good guys in white hats, bad guys in black pajamas mentality, and, you know, go out and brutally occupy this country because they can have the fig leaf of civil affairs. That's what we were. We were a fig leaf for the whole operation because the administration has clearly demonstrated that they care more about looking good than doing right. And as soon as you choose looking good over doing right, you will fail miserably at both, as we have seen, not just in Iraq, but in our foreign policy in general. So I was in the Fallujah area in 2004. I was attached to a Gulf company, Second Battalion, 1st Marines during the invasion, or during the the first battle of Fallujah, which was April 2004, precipitated by the killing of 4 Blackwater security agents as they came across the southern bridge over the Euphrates into the city. They were immediately ambushed, killed, had their bodies burned and strung up on the northern bridge of Fallujah. Pretty famous incident. So there was one incident there that was really one of the most difficult things I had to deal with during my time. And we were in the process of distributing humanitarian rations to a village that had been cut off from their main food supply, which was the city of Fallujah, because of our siege. And there was a firefight to the west of our position, and one of the squads of the Gulf Company was pretty heavily engaged, and one of the Marines had just gotten shot. He got shot through the side of his flak jacket, and the bullet hit an artery near his spine. And my team was called to help get him to the field hospital at Camp Takatam, which is a little to the southeast of there. And we put together an emergency medevac convoy of 3 vehicles. Drove up to pull him out of that situation. He was loaded on the Humvee in front of me, and we raced through, you know, what we call ID Alley there, raced through the gates, around all the roadblocks and everything else to get this guy to the field hospital. And while we were driving, I was driving the second vehicle, he was in the first vehicle, and I was watching the foreman scrambling to treat this Marine, you know, while we're driving through, and there's dust all over the place, and you know, it's just this unbelievable sense of panic where you're so, you know, the urgency is so overwhelming. It's kind of indescribable. But we pulled up to the hospital, the field hospital there, the tents, and one of the Marines got out and was scrambling to open the gate, the tailgate of that vehicle, because it had a full load of ammo, of water jugs and gas cans in the back. And they couldn't leverage the gate up to get the hooks off, so I ran up and leaned on it, and we were able to drop the tailgate. And as it happened, the stretcher that this Marine was on was broken and bent in the middle. And so it took 4 people to carry him instead of 2, right? And so I'm actually, since I'm right there, I helped pick the stretcher off, and I'm carrying the left side of it. And this Marine, Lance Corporal Frank, was bleeding really badly internally and fading in and out, and you could see it. And really moaning and writhing in pain there on the stretcher. And I didn't really, you know, I didn't even try to think of it in terms of the immediate reality of the medical situation for him, but he flailed his arm off the stretcher and I put it back on, and nobody was saying anything, so I just told him, I said, hey, we made it, we're at the hospital, you're going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. So what else do you say in that situation, right? And we got him in, and he died just a few minutes later from the internal bleeding. And if I had told him the truth, if I had the presence of mind and the brutal honesty required to tell that Marine, you're screwed, you're not going to make it, you just got shot by a man who is defending his homeland against foreign occupiers, who is a hero to most of his fellow countrymen for shooting you, and you're here because you were lied to, and the only reason we have to rebuild this place is because we broke it in a war based on lies, everybody there would have thrown down their weapons and said, well, screw this, this is the last one. This is going to be the last Marine that dies because of this. And if I had been that person then, probably wouldn't have been there. None of us would have. But rather than saying that, I did what you would expect. I told them, you're going to be okay. And when that illusion was shattered, we were emotionally devastated. But we still didn't take it upon ourselves to look at the bigger illusions that we were operating under. And a lot of, I'm describing this in a certain way that I hope people understand the implications of in the broader context of why we're here and why we're libertarians. That a big part of what we do in terms of education and promoting the ideas of liberty are about getting people past those illusions. Getting people past the things that drive them to think that they need an authoritative power to improve their lives or provide for their safety or the common good. And it's not just an educational process, it's an emotional process. And I hope that you guys appreciate that in the outreach, when you do outreach, or when you have that friend that you send columns to or emails to on a regular basis, or that you want to talk to about certain issues, because you know there's the libertarian inside that person just waiting to get out, you know, but that it's an emotional process, that you cannot throw any amount of information at someone and make them understand why we do what we do and why we believe what we believe in and why we're so passionate about it. And while I was intellectually a libertarian before that, it was the process of going through that and coming home and seeing Marines die on the battlefield that made me realize that the things that we talk about, that life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, whatever terms we want to put on it, all of the issues that we're dealing with, when they come down to a matter of right and wrong, it's really not an academic matter. It's not, you know, I mean, and so often in monetary policy we get caught in the weeds of all these things like you know, whether or not Keynesian economics works, whether or not priming the pump works, it doesn't matter. It's immoral. You are enriching a few at the cost of the many. It doesn't matter if it works or doesn't in the long term or the short term. It is fundamentally immoral. And when you deprive people of that of property, you're depriving them of life, one way or another. And that all of the issues before us today can be seen this way. All of the issues before us today really are a matter of life and death. What we're dealing with in politics, it's become such a malign word, but politics, government, is how we determine the use of force in society. And how can we do so in a more moral way? And how can we do so in a way that respects the rights of other people? It really is a matter of life and death. And that was the transformation for me. Not just that one incident, but going to Iraq and realizing that bad policy is not an academic matter. It's not a matter of law or numbers or anything like that. It really is a matter of life and death. And that is why when I came home and got the presence of mind to take a step back from my illusions about the war in Iraq, and I really expected that after I left September 2004 that there'd be much more of a drawdown, and to look around and be like, well, we've had a surge since then. We've had multiple surges. That was what led me to join Iraq Veterans Against the War. And in Iraq Veterans Against the War, we're calling for three things. First and foremost, an immediate withdrawal of all occupying forces from Iraq. Now, it may sound like an extreme position, but all of the reasons that people raise, all the specters that people raise in terms of why we can't leave immediately are based on fear or propaganda of some sort, or a general racism and disdain for the Iraqi people. But although I know that the process of getting 150-something thousand troops as it is now out of Iraq is a process that may take a couple of months logistically. The occupation, that is to say, the forceful interference with Iraqi sovereignty, the crime that is this occupation, can end immediately. It can end by a single presidential order. And we're not going to get that out of Obama, despite him having fooled most of the country into believing that he is a peace candidate. It's also very telling that he is willing to call what is also fundamentally, no matter what propaganda spin or other excuses you create for it, an occupation in Afghanistan. He wants to put 30,000 more troops there, that he wants to extend that occupation. Second thing we're calling for is reparations for the Iraqi people. And this is difficult for a lot of libertarians and to square with my own libertarian philosophy. But to me, a lot of the work that I'm proud of that I did in Iraq was in paying people for damage that we caused during the siege of Fallujah. Now, we paid people $2,500 if we killed their son by accident.